You are now listening to FNB Radio.
And welcome to FNB Radio. My name is Lindsay Collins, and I am your host. I know it's been 4 weeks since I've done a show. I'm aware of that. I counted each week and was like, not this week. It just kept going like that. And I gave myself, a holiday. It was the fucking holidays. If it's not an actual holiday for me, then what does it matter? But I'm back, and I have a very, very, very huge guest. I was like, thought about how I want to intro this guest.
Big boned.
He's a large man. He's a large and very interesting man. I don't even, there's so many ways to intro you. I'm going to do a sloppy job of it, but I think that it's most important to say an incredible painter. You went to the Rhode Island School of Design. You worked at MTV when MTV was cool. You've done so many amazing things in your career. You're James Beard Award winning. Who knows?
Which is weird because I don't know how to cook.
That's hilarious to me. And this was one of my favorite factoids about you. You've done so many incredible things. You're collected by people like Renee Zellweger. You have a mural outside of Larry David's studio in LA. You've lived in New York, Los Angeles. Your work is collected all over the world. And it's an incredible honor because when we moved to this city, Jeremy saw your paintings and was like, holy shit, there's a world-class artist that lives and works in Charleston, and it's Tim Hussey. And Tim, I would like to welcome you to the show. Thank you for being here.
This has been long in the making, at least weeks.
Weeks.
Yeah.
Weeks.
I'm glad we finally got it together.
It really is an honor.
Though I'm not used to talking this close to somebody.
No.
Yeah.
We're like, just for the listener at home, we're sitting across a very small, narrow, well, it's kind of long, but it's narrow, paint-covered table.
It was a gem when I found this table.
Where did you find it?
Because somebody had just cut it in half and then remade it. See, I don't know what they did, but it's a weird table, but I love it.
They did do something weird to this table. This is like one of those, I don't know what you do with this table, except what you've done with it.
Just a really close talker's banquet. Tiny half plates you put right here.
Little baby plates. Tim.
Yes.
When I met you, I was like, this is weird because I've known about your work. And as soon as I saw your work with my own eyes, Jeremy went on and on about your work. And then I saw your work and I was like, you could put that, you don't have to know anything about art to be like, that's world-class art. That's like an incredible piece of work. And I just don't find that everywhere because I think it's just a rare thing to be able to do what you do. And it's a long career you've had already, and it's taken many different evolutions. But it's your name kind of gets whispered around Charleston as like this legendary. You're a contemporary of Shepard Fairey. You're a friend of Shepard Fairey. Yeah. You've shown work with Shepard Fairey. You're just kind of like unbelievable in that. You're the shit. Like basically, you're the shit, Tim. Can we just say? We'll start with a shower of compliments.
The shit of Charleston.
You are the
shit of the Tri-County area. Is like what I like to say.
The shit of the Low Country. But it's how did you come to be this way? Your career started early.
It did start early, but I don't, my career has never ended up where I thought I wanted it to. Each segment of my career has never exploded in some huge moment, whereas I always, wanted to be really good at what I did. And when I was in college, of course, and you have friends, good peers, I had a lot of really great talent around me, my roommates and best buddies, So I had it in me to kind of always think that you want to be the best. So you'd say, oh, look at this artist. When I was an illustrator in college, it was like, oh, I wanted to be, these top illustrators, Brad Holland, these Marshall Arizman, these people that were big in my time. So, but my career, it was like I have such a truthometer in my gut that is very, very hard to avoid and ignore and steer away from in any way, because if I do, I literally will get depressed or feel sort of sick in a strange way. It is definitely a very real feeling, and I can't put my finger on it, but it's since I was a kid, but more evident even as I got older, like that if I stray too far trying to be something, if I do work that's just in the name of trying to be famous or big or celebrated in some way or the top of the game, it fails, or I fail, I feel bad about myself to the point where I want to change careers, like that I can't stand it that much.
Wow.
So like with illustration, which was sort of my first foray into like the professional world.
And just for the listener, when you were at the Rhode Island School of Design, is that what you studied? Did
Yeah.
you studied illustration?
I studied illustration.
That was what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought that was the way to go. I don't know why. Mainly I always tell people the honest truth about like school is that I just I lived in the same dream world in my head that I did when I was a kid, and in high school. I just sort of skirted by, just sort of, I didn't really know where I was in time. I just know that I lived in this strange little space in my head. I was able to be a normal social person, but I look back, I guess a lot of people have this about college, because it's such an early time in life. You look back and you hate, like, wow, what a bunch of wasted time. And I think about all the talent, the people that were really working hard, and I just thought of it as like more of homework, just like it was just high school again for me. So I didn't really think, dang, this is a time to really be challenged by your peers. Now, through osmosis, it's going to happen anyways.
Yes.
Because you're at a really good school, and if that's your people around you, you're going to try to rise to whatever they're doing. But I could have done more, But back to your point is that, I studied illustration because it just seemed like that's what people did. I had already gotten published a little bit. My sophomore year here at
Wow.
Charleston Magazine, I had done like some illustrations. So it was like a natural progression. But painting is really where I landed, and I was meant to land. And it's just strange that I didn't start out there. But I think it was too loose. It didn't have enough. There weren't enough boundaries in painting for me to learn. I needed to learn through illustration and slowly get to where I could release and find my own language,
And when you said that if you hated what you were doing or if it wasn't true to you, you would almost want to change careers.
Yeah.
And that's like a strong feeling. But I also identify with that because it's like it's a protectiveness of what you think you should be able to do and where you feel you want the work to be. And it's almost too painful to see it not come out the way you want it to.
Yeah.
So did you decide to just move on from illustration? Because I've seen a couple of your illustrations from the early days, and it's just like one of my favorites was the growing out your arms, and it's a person. There are these you have these amazing
that
ideas.
was when I was in college. Yeah.
Like, they're these really kind of like punk rock spirited ideas of just sort of nonsense, but also not nonsense at all. Like it's very rooted in something very real that asks questions about what is nonsense and what is sense. And I love that about your work.
Yes.
And so how was it? What was it that made you say, like, I'm not doing this anymore? I can't. Was there one piece of work, or was it
I tell you,
time?
I owe a lot to my father, who a lot of people, if they just met my dad, they wouldn't say, oh, wow, this guy was the big force. But everybody's father is their big force.
Yes.
You just don't know what. It's not always obvious what it is they did, but that's what you knew as a kid. So my father has a very dry sense of humor and a little bit nonsensical. He's very quiet, but when he says things, like he always tells me still that like when he's talking to anybody, all he's thinking the whole time is, how can I make a joke out of that, what they're saying right now? And then how, like, and it's kind of weird because it's almost like he wants to keep, not believe that the world is real in a way, like keep it really funny all the time. And so I learned that, of course, from him, and because I'm so funny.
You are funny.
And then so he did things like when I was just a little kid, maybe 8, 9, 7, probably like 7, actually. He gave me books by this guy named B. Kleiben. He's a great cartoonist he came out with like 5 books. One was called Never Eat Anything Bigger Than Your Head, which was mine, probably my favorite. They're still here. They're still in my little library. I think they're downstairs. But they really influence everything I did across the board. These books became like my little Bible that I carried to college with me and everything. And all they are is just single or double cell. They're not like comics. They're more like one-off little drawings. This guy was actually like, I think, a realist painter for a long time, but he wasn't successful at it. Wow. And so he just started doing these cartoons. And one book made it really popular. It's called Cat.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
It's like these real, like, detailed little drawings, like a cat, like saying strange things or whatever. I think it was called Cat. And then, so I had these books, and they, I guess what I'm saying is they're the ones that taught me, because I still study them, and I say, because you don't know why every joke is funny. And when you're a little kid, all you're looking at is like, oh, that poop one is funny. Yeah. Because it's poop.
Yeah.
And this one's funny because it shows boobies, you know? And this one's funny because this guy bonked him on the head or whatever, you know? But because I admired my father, and because I was like an only child, so I didn't have a lot of daily distraction by a brother or sister, I thought of my father as my peer. So I was, you know, well, okay, my dad is so cool, so funny.
What did he do?
These books, I want to know what these books meant, you know, like what do they mean to him? And so I was constantly and unconsciously, I guess, sort of studying these jokes. And I see it in my daughter now when I'll say something really weird. I'll see her head, she just kind of freezes for a bit and looks off into space. And my wife and Elise and my wife and I are like, Merrick's processing all that right now. She's going to get to the end because she needs to know why the heck that was funny to me. And I do that. So I did that with these, and that really changed my whole view of, it didn't change. It
set
my view of humor, and that it was really about, and Mad Libs, as we mentioned earlier, were my favorite outlet for just joking. That's the hardest I've ever laughed in my life. I always say like Mad Libs, not someone's joke, but Mad Libs, the ridiculousness of these moments. So with illustration, I wanted that same thing. I wanted like the sort of dark humor. The problem with my illustrations were they already had me as a painter in them. So they were known as being very rough-hewn and painterly. But my problem was I didn't have any interest in adhering to like the exact details of an article that I'd be illustrating. So it was all editorial for magazines, you know. So say GQ had asked me to do a picture. I remember it was a piece on modern torture.
Whoa. And
like some of the strange things they were doing to people, like whether it's like forcing pornography on the person, or forcing or sound torture, you know, like high pitched noises. So I did this piece, but it just, they accepted it, but they made me like sort of lighten the skin color and different things. And I understand now. I understood then in a way that it looked like it was a very particular race or something, the way I had done this illustration. Though I hadn't meant to do that. All I was doing was playing with color. But my responsibility as an illustrator was to appeal across all people and not like create controversy, you know. So that was hard for me. And a lot of times I left arms out of my characters in my illustrations because if they weren't using their arms, I just didn't put them in there. And so people would say like, where is it? You know, we like this piece where the person doesn't have arms. Are they behind his back or something? And I was like, I don't know. I thought y'all just liked my illustration style.
This is a fascinating thing that I feel like happens to people a lot when artists are putting their work in front of people who aren't necessarily artists themselves or don't have a great understanding of art, but think they do, pointing out technical flaws, like quote unquote, like, well, I just really wish you would have finished this side of the note. It's like it's like they can only grasp on to the very topical.
Different kinds of people.
Like that's a really base thing to.
But of course, it was an illustration. That's why I left illustration, because I didn't understand how to keep in the rules.
Yeah.
And I do respect that. I understand that now. Being an art director, of course, I hire illustrators all the time, and I'm like, I'm so easy on them. You know, I'm like, yeah, that looks great, and then the staff, you know, will be like, well, this technically doesn't really look like them. I'm like, come on, man. It's just an illustration.
Is it fun to look at?
Also,
Yeah.
it's just also I kind of just am, I always like to call myself the grumpy art director, because to be a painter, to be my kind of painting, full-fledged, just full, what do you call it? Just wide open. Like, I mean, within my language, but it took being wide open to get to where I found what my language was, And when art direction is the opposite, and it's a very commercial thing, and a lot of painters do it, to be fair. I mean, it's a great way to support yourself and your habit while you're painting, but it's very hard to go from being able to express yourself and people just say, I like that. I like it because you did it too. I don't care. I like it. To go into to graphic design where it's like, well, we thought that yellow was kind of strange to do. And I'm just like, I'm so grouchy.
Yeah.
I'm really not. And I apologize for it as I get older a lot more, because I'm like, they're just trying to do their job. They don't want to get in trouble. They're just like, can you change that? And I'm like, no. I'm like, you don't understand. And I'll debate it until they're just like, okay, fine. Just.
But I think this is a really interesting point, because I was raised playing classical piano, and all I ever wanted to do was play in bands and jam with my friends. And people would see this ability and they would think like, well, you can do anything. Why can't you put this ability towards? It's not. You can't just point it at anything you want. You have to kind of stay in one place. But it's so much more free, and it can be a real tug of war when you're like, I am just an artist who happens to be gifted at illustration, but you don't fit in that world, and the way that you make art doesn't follow those rules. It can be really hard to find your place. And I think a lot of, like, in base terms, artists will say things like, what is my style? Or they're trying to discover themselves as an artist, and like figuring that out can take a lifetime. And I think people are really, especially now, are like in the world of Instagram, where it's like you need to be established and you need to like have a recognizable style and go for something that's, I don't know, gonna make sense to people. My computer just closing.
Are you trying to work while you're talking to me, Lindsay? I'm out of here.
It can be really. It's a hard thing for people to land on, where it's like, you're obviously gifted at this ability. You've been able to do it since you were a kid. You have this inspiration to do illustration, but then it's like that world just doesn't fit. You don't fit there the way you want to. Yeah. And I'd
say the same about painting. I mean, I think it's as cool and pretentious it is for me to say this, that, the whole thing of like, if you see the Buddha, kill him. Because if you think you've found it, if you've figured out what you are as an artist, this is what I am, this is where I land, then you're not making art anymore. So and I'd be, I would say, I'd be so bold as to say,
yes, please.
But I don't think it's a non-truth, is that all work, if any of your work is done toward trying to please an audience, or try to fit a bill, or try to work with a gallery, or try to fit a theme that a gallery has said, this month we're doing, blah, blah, blah. If you're doing that at all, and I've done it a lot, but it is commercial art 100%. Because if any commercial is in there at all, any commercialism, if anybody's making money off of it, then it's commercial art. And I'm going to say you have to just go ahead and come to terms with and love that's life is commercial. What are you trying to do? You're trying to survive, right? Yeah. That's why I sort of instinctively fell in love with the art brut movement and art and psychosis. And my big goal in life was to get to and I did it a few years ago, going to the Lausanne Museum of Art Brut, which is in Switzerland. Wow. And it's all art it's all art made by people that have psychosis or in prisons or just, live out in the woods by themselves. This is all so-called pure art, like like you were not trained. This is the untrained artist realm. And to me, that is the most, that's the only uncommercial, non-commercial art there is. And
And
so
it's-
it's admirable. I love it.
It's really almost impossible. The more artists that I come in contact with, and even making work myself, it's very hard. It's like an exercise in the mind. You have to be very strong and powerful in your mind to shut out. And I don't think anybody can actually do it. I think people can say they're going for that, or say, okay, I've done the commercial art and I don't want to do that anymore. But it's so palpable that watching people respond to your work, it's hard not to see a metric, whether it's sales or response or press
Yes.
or an achievement or getting in a
Praise
certain,
is currency.
Yes.
Is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Praise is a form of currency. That's what you're exchanging
how can you
for.
keep that so pure? How can you continue to do work without getting in your head? It's almost like as soon as artists start to have some success, they get into their own head, and it's almost like they've lost connection with what got them there in the first place. And it's scary.
And you'll always be trying to get back to that. That's why people have always pointed out children's work as being like sometimes they hit on brilliant moments.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because we're seeing it as like what took some artists years to get to, but the child hasn't a clue what they've just done that seems, that's composed perfectly. Or, look how they just put this little red spot here and nothing else.
Or they're making it for no reason.
Yeah, they're making it for no reason.
Like that even in and of itself is like a wild thing to do once you become what you've become, which is, I feel like, you said you don't think you've had that one moment of success, but I would argue, like, does anybody ever have that one defining moment, or is that just us, like, looking at their career overall and kind of filling in the gaps that were obviously there, that were like times when they didn't.
Yeah. Maybe there is a lot of illusion. I mean, of course, we all project into people and think people are bigger and better than they are when they would argue. Most people are like, no, I struggle all the time. Like that, I think for a very a thoughtful person that is always trying to learn and do better with their craft, I don't think they're ever going to feel cocky or like they deserve. You never hear somebody that's at the top of the game say, "Yep, I deserve every move I've done here. I did this, and this, and those things." I remember thinking I'd be the best, and here I am, the best.
Do you?
That's
feel
not the way it works.
Like there is a piece of work or a time in your life where you were like, I'm proud of it. I can say with my full self that I'm proud of this work and that it does deserve it.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that?
Yes.
When?
I don't. I just know that almost everything that I did. It's funny. Like even the growing out your arms piece, I hadn't seen that in a long time. But an old friend from RISD who I hadn't talked to in 30 years sent a picture of that in the mail and said, "I just was digging through the attic and found this thing you had given me as a thank you note for something while we were in school." And that's what that was. And I was like, wow, I like that thing. And it makes you think like, how am I just so far away from that original, little more pure thinking? Because it's true, a lot of artists do have their little moment when the public says they're doing something special because it's so unique to them, their voice is so unique. But then with that, once they're discovered, comes self-imitation, and then people getting used to their work to the point of where it's just it's like some comedy. You can only hear the same style of joke over and over until you're really used to it. So you're just familiar with it. So you say that comedian was really funny a long time ago. Well, he hadn't changed. It's just that our way of hearing it has changed. So that's the way. So I always love I only love stuff that I do like a minimum of a year later. Whenever I have a piece that's just done, it is always. And I just learned this from watching an interview with an artist. I can't remember his name, because I'm always like, sometimes I wonder how other artists decide when a piece is done.
Wow.
That's a big question, right?
Yes.
And so I've studied that because I have my time when I feel like something's done, but once in a while I get lost and I think I'd like to hear some wise words from other artists. And really it was just, this guy just said, I'm done when I just look at it and say, I don't think there's anything else that I know I cannot add any. What is alive here is its own. He did not say this, but this is me totally paraphrasing. But it's like what I made, this Frankenstein or whatever, is alive now, and anything I would add to it would just now start taking it to another piece of art. It wouldn't be this anymore. So I think that, a lot of artists will sit there, and this can be a real to their demise, is like they can sit there with a piece for years on the wall and just they won't finish it, and they don't know how to finish it because they let it go too long. They just let it sit too long and not letting it just be what it is. And so now I've gotten to a confidence level where I'm like, okay, I've done this. I've done enough paintings, and I know my language sort of enough that I know that if I do all this and this all works, and I look at it and I say it's done, it is. It doesn't mean that it's going to be my favorite down the line, but I know that I have to move on, And sometimes that'll become a favorite to people, and sometimes it'll just be later it'll become a favorite to me, but nobody else really cares for it. It's usually Jeremy and I agree on that.
Yes.
It's the pieces that you thought were the most obvious, sort of sucky, just amateur, just straightforward pieces that people love and buy. And then it's the pieces that you really felt like you broke ground with that nobody's interested in, except that one person that you become best friends with later because they walk into a gallery or your studio, whatever, and say, I love this. I love what's going on here. And you go, what?
Right.
Like, you see how I see? Suddenly that becomes like such an ally. You're like, oh, I love you for seeing that because nobody else does. So it's like you have your career, and then you have your little mini career and goal within that career, right?
Yes, and almost a parallel career that's happening all the time, which is like, here's the one that I'm excited about and like, and here's the one that's like a little bit of a compromise, or like something that I'm just having to say, like, yes, I can keep working and I live to see another day. And that's where I think I don't think anybody sets out to be commercial or non-pure, but I think it ends up happening so easily because the success that does come, if it comes at all, is... it's really hard to put that out of your head and keep working and not get hung up or to a place where you can't work anymore. And we're looking at it. You're sitting in front of a beautiful piece that you've just finished in your studio right now. So you are absolutely still working now. But since, let's say since 2009, when the documentary came out with Adam Boozer, how has your career changed since then? How has let's not even call it fuck your career, but how has your approach to art and how has your practice changed since then?
I do remember there being like a little bit of a I don't know if you call it, a little bit of a depression, I guess, or a recession or something during that time, because I had Adam's thing came out, and then I also had the show at the Waterfront Gallery. It was like
the retrospect.
It was much too young to have a retrospective, but I was like, I don't know what to call this, but I just kind of feel like filling it up with showing the progress from almost like school until now, And so summing all that up, though, all the time and energy and research and looking back at old pieces that came with that really almost felt like I had died, like I was about to die or something. So this is his life's work,
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, what do I do now? And I had just met Elise. We were dating.
Shout out to Elise. We love Elise so much.
Yeah, we love her.
She's the best.
Downstairs making hamantaschen or something like that. So she's been making Jewish pastries for like 6 months now.
Oh my God. I got some
fetish.
for Christmas, and it's really, we
delicious.
just ate them all in the car.
She's the one that really should be here. You have much more to talk about.
We'll have her on the show. So you had just met Elise.
Yeah, I just met Elise. So that really, I had a lot of things in my mind. I had like a new chapter of love and a desire for a new beginning. So after we got married, we moved to LA. But I could just remember the first couple of pieces I did right after the show. It was like, I'm ready. I knew I had declared, which always means that's a big fail. Like when you declare that I now only do abstract art, and I did.
Where did you declare that?
I declared it like I just declared.
To yourself?
I actually went to the mayor's office and I got on the loudspeaker.
I want to make a declaration.
Yeah. No, I just did to myself. I was like, okay, make your life easy because you seem to like mostly just straight abstract now. So just say that's what you do. And I ended up doing the piece that's downstairs in the dining room, that really large piece. That was the first piece I did after the show. But then I had a long lull. I mean, I really loved that piece, but I didn't know what it was. And then I had a long time. And I don't know how has my career changed? I mean,
or even just how you approach art and think about art and even think about yourself.
Yeah, you know what? That was probably around the time that I started saying, I think I'm starting to feel like no matter what books I look at or other art I see, that my language and my approach has become part of my DNA is there. Even if it's the DNA formed by college and all your, well, what is, I mean, what is all your influences
makeup,
are from, maybe it started with dad, and then there was this leap to high school. I didn't think about art, and then it was college.
But how did you end up at an art school if you didn't think about art you didn't do any art in high school?
I did some, but it's just the last 2 years, because not the first 2 years I was at Bishop England, and it was a little larger school, and plus it's just hormones. Come on, Lindsay.
Yeah, no, I know.
I mean, it was just all you're thinking about is if you're liked in general, just getting by, and you wanted to surf and you wanted to look at girls, and it's all you thought about. All I did. I wish I had been more like Shepard, who was really naturally stuck with his sort of his anti-establishment or something kind of vision. Even as we were skateboarding together as kids, he cared about everything he did was very thought out, and he was forming his career from high school on.
Wow.
Whereas I didn't start my career in a way until a couple years living in New York after college. I didn't really start thinking, oh, okay, it's not just understood that, oh, you can draw and that's just something you can do. Do you want to, you just paid a bunch for this art school. What do you want to do? And so, but in high school, it wasn't until I switched over to Portugal, and my teacher, Miss Gleaton, really took me under her wing and said, let's make something here. And that could be because Portugal, likes that 100% acceptance rate and all that kind of stuff. Everybody has their reasons, but she said, where do you want to go to school? And I said, I want to go to the best art school in the world, and
and you did.
And I applied to it. My mother drove me up there, but I applied to a bunch of different things, and I got waitlisted at RISD. That was the only one I got waitlisted for, and I was like, oh well, but then they called me a couple of days later, and whoever decided not to go, I got their place,
Wow.
And I always try to tell people that if I'm ever speaking at a college or anything, is just remember, all that stuff hardly means anything, because so many people have come out of my class, and they don't do anything art related at all. There's so many. And they might have been top of their class, first ones accepted. They might have gotten scholarships, who knows, but you just don't know what's going to be made. Of course, some of my favorite artists and people, didn't go to school at all.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter. But yeah, so that's why in high school I had already had my ability to draw that I'd been practicing for years, but I was just drawing pictures from photos with pencil of my friends, hanging out on the beach or whatever, and that was the best I could do. And I usually do it to hey, here's a girl I like. I drew a picture of you, and it's a way to connect, or look psycho, of course.
No, I would do the same thing. I would be like, do you want me to give you a piano lesson? There's all these ways that you can use the art that's very seductive and gets you
what you're doing
to connect.
You're no better than a dude. Lindsay, shame on you.
I gave Jeremy a piano lesson in high school. We went to the same high school.
A pianist? You mean a penis lesson?
A penis lesson.
Oh, I mispronounced that.
You're saying
again.
It wrong.
No, anyway, so if you're going to give him a piano lesson, you can edit that out.
No edits, Tim. I think that it's amazing, though, that you would have always been someone who was identifiably gifted. You don't just get waitlisted at RISD. You don't get to RISD. You don't get to actually go there without having some tangible identifiable talent that's there.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you just don't.
Yeah.
Especially if it's something that you're really not even like sure that's what you want to do.
Even if they're just like, this guy's a fixer-upper, but we need more average white guys with blonde hair, surfer kids in here. That's what they were thinking back then. Now I could never get in. Now I'd never be in. They would just assume put like anybody from a different country in, or anybody.
But I'm like fascinated by your longevity as an artist, because specifically I am around constantly people who are artists right now who are their 30s and 40s, sometimes in their 20s, in that range, that I think they're going to be where they are or like continue on the trajectory that they are forever. They're kind of like in this Peter Pan concept of nothing's ever going to change and this is always going to be how it is and it's just going to keep going. But if you really look at an artist like yourself who has continued to put out work and has new work on the wall right now after such a long and amazing career, I don't think enough people understand what that takes, the kind of fight that takes, because it really does at some point like not make sense, talking about sense again, but like it can be really hard.
It scares parents. They don't want to see you doing that forever, you know?
But I mean, like you have this vantage point of being an artist that's still working and is still that's incredible. Still broke
After all these, that's my biography.
Still broke. No, what does it look like from your vantage point? Like, how do you feel about art now?
Well, first of all, I've had people say that before. Close friends. My Jonas Pate, Jay Pate, is a close buddy for 30-something years, and he is the writer-director of Outer Banks, the show. Cool. And he said to me a couple of years ago, he said, man, he talks like that. He was like, man, big congrats to like you've been like working at this since, I can remember you've been like working at this. And I remember when he said that, because I respect everything he says, he's a very smart guy. And I was like, I guess so, but it certainly doesn't feel like I had to say, oh God, I'm going to push this another year. And if I don't make it, I quit, It never felt like that. It felt like, again, just like as a child, like I lived in this little separate world from everybody in my head. And there was no way that I was ever going to have just a normal career or even life. But I wasn't a weird guy. I wasn't like a super artsy, but I think it's just because of what my dad sort of put in me naturally. I had this sort of like inside lane, a little inside interior life and I think that helped me get through a lot of things. I never felt peer pressure growing up. Because I always felt like I had my own take, and that really my best friends were like just me and my family, or something to that effect. Yeah. So I try to instill that in my girls, that make to have something that you love to do that's so yours and so you, that once you're in like scary school, that you carry that with you, that like nobody can really hurt you because you're already formed. Yeah. They're not going to steer you in some direction. I never did drugs. I never drank anything in high school. I was very like straight-laced. I didn't think of myself as straight-laced. Yeah. It's just weird.
No, I really get that a lot, because I don't know if you know this, but I was homeschooled up until high school. And so I kind of was left to develop without any outside pressure. Yeah. And I think it makes people, not all people are just born like that, but some people are, and it's a very, it's an incredible way to grow up, because you're not constantly just swayed by everything that comes into your space. And that's when you're trying to find yourself as a person or as an artist or whatever you're going to be. I think it's insane and criminal when people are like, so you're 17. What would you like to do with the rest of your life? Yeah. Like, it's like, I don't know. But what you said that just fascinates me is that you never had to say, oh, I'm going to push it another year. It wasn't like a goal that you were trying to achieve or a start and a stop. It's just kind of like, this is who I am, and I'm just going to keep being this person. And you don't see it as like a long suffering of like, I've been enduring this process for this many years.
Oh, damn it. No, it's just like, it is. I've always
That's amazing.
Insisted on making career just as important as your so-called non-career life, your life, your love life, your friends, what you do for fun. I'm not going to sit there and say I'm like the guy that's like, listen, love what you do, and you'll never work a day in your life, because it's not like that. It was definitely like making art is hard, and living, not knowing where your next check's always coming from is hard.
Yeah.
But to be clear, I had my path and everything, but the path was really wide. I mean, my path is like the New Jersey Turnpike. It's like the amount of lanes that I tried, but that were all still going generally in the direction of who I am now. Like I never just randomly tried banking or whatever. But it was like I tried everything, and it's embarrassing the shit that I tried. I mean, acting is the big one. That's the big embarrassing one. It's just like I didn't even try. I mean, I just took a class and thought, yeah, I'm cool. Like I just still wanted to be.
I love that.
I thought of acting as being because I was still in the big time ego phase of my early young life, like mid 20s. It's like, yeah, acting. But yet I had never acted as a kid. I'd never really thought of myself. Comedy maybe. Yeah. But I ended up. So I changed direction. I changed direction again with that, but I did photography, graphic design, illustration, painting, hand lettering, making my own fonts, cartoons, to MTV, which was like set design, and intertwined with me actually painting for MTV, on the backgrounds as I'm doing my paintings. So
that's wild.
It was a big mess of Tim Hussey, just a big, muddy puddle of stuff that I was trying to do. Yeah. But it's really, I really feel the most secure right now. It took like 2 or 3 years. I think after I had kids, maybe that's when I finally felt like, hey, first of all, my life is not just about me, maybe not at all now, that it's really about the kids. And this feeling, and you want that. Like I welcomed it. I was like, thank God, this feels so good not to have the attention of me on me only, and just thinking about what my career is going to do next. So now I look through their eyes at what my career is. So I want to be really honest with my work, because that's the legacy I want to leave to them, is that whatever you do, be honest with it, And I just calmed down a little bit. Yeah. Like I don't push my paintings anymore. I never want to have shows. I'm not interested in galleries at all. And now good things seem to just come to me, but I don't rush it.
I think that's amazing. And I totally get that feeling, because I'm like, a lot of people will say like the kids, everybody knows we have 3 kids, but they're like, how do you get anything done? Or and I'm like, actually, they're kind of a huge source. They're like a charge. They like charge and take away at the same time. Right. It's weird. It's like it's they're like, go feeling. Mom. Okay, now stop. Come on back. Exactly. Yeah, they take so much from you, but at the same time, like they're this source of pure kind of like inspiration, and also they keep you from going full into your own head about yourself and turning that eye onto yourself.
You don't have time to second guess as much. You don't have all those options to go, maybe I'll be an actor now. Right. And that's what I had. I had too much space my whole life to think that. And that is it's a problem of the last, many generations, maybe starting in the 60s, I don't know, but just like it's too much freedom to think. And
the belief that you could be anything. But I also feel like creatives in general, that's a common theme, I think, like have tried on so many things, because if you're creative in one way, you're going to be creative in a million ways. Yeah. And I've also, like, I started in theater, and like I've done, I'll try anything. If it's like cake decorating, I'm like, anything to me, I see it as a project that is like, how can I make this cool and you can bring and interesting to me?
Yeah. How can you insert or inject your vision into something that's not in your normal realm?
Yeah. Sometimes it's the medicine that you need to move on to the next project that you're trying to do. Like in my case now, it's writing, but I'm like, a lot of times doing other creative pursuits, even if they're not ones that I'm like good at or even know what I'm doing. It can be this way of retraining your brain to just do something that it isn't necessarily good at, but through the lens of your own DNA, if you will.
Yeah. So you can think that, okay, I often think that I don't need to make painting at all anymore. I mean, up until, this morning, I don't know. It's like it plagues me all the time. Like, I think I'm done. I think I just now want to organize all these photos because I'm very good at documenting everything I do. That's just part of me. I've always been really good at documenting every single thing I do, and because I like books, I like sort of compendiums of people's careers, and but I often think like, maybe I don't need that anymore. Yeah, geez, I enjoy my friends, I enjoy my kids, and so I'll go through a little phase of just saying I don't need it. And that's when it'll come back a little stronger. Or maybe I'll go to a museum and I'll see something and go, oh, I'm there. I am in that painting. I know what this person's trying to do because I also worked really hard to get to the point where I know what that person's trying to do. That I was, and I just see it as like, golly, and so it brings me back in. That's what I'm saying, because I was thinking it's like, okay, this is what it's like. It's like when people have a mental illness.
Yes.
And everybody does, but you take a drug and it helps you. Let's say you're bipolar or whatever. It helps you a lot. So your life has gotten back on track. You have great friends. Things are looking good. So your brain says, I don't need to take these pills anymore. I'm fine now.
Right.
Like I don't need it.
And
so you stop it. And everything goes to shit again. So you don't realize what a subtle but profound thing this is in your head, that you can't just remove. Look, I don't think painting is everything. I didn't look at painting when I was a kid. Painting is just like, I happen to have, just like you were talking earlier, you could do, if you're a creative person, you can do so many things.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just all about what was put in your hand when you're a kid, what you're exposed to, then what people praised you for. So you end up, oh, I'm going this way now. And suddenly, so painting has become this thing, though I really don't care about art supplies. I don't care about brands of paint. I don't care about types of papers. I don't buy into the expensive materials. I do only now because it's only responsible to have archival materials. And this could be a little more expensive. Because for a client, it's not fair to have not be using good materials. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm very much aware that all this could have gone toward music, or writing, or any of these other things that don't make a damn cent to life.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, I could be broke and depressed with anything I do.
Any of these.
But I mean, there's just so many directions, and so that still messes with me. That's why I got this camera, because photography, and people are always kind of surprised at this, but photography is hands down my favorite art in the world. And it's like the stuff when I collect so many photographers' books.
Wow.
And when I was in college, it was the biggest turn on for me. I really saw it as an interesting challenge. And I don't see it as dead. I'm sick of these stupid articles where they say, is photography dead? Especially with AI, you can just... No. The articles usually do. What they're trying to say is, actually, it's not dead.
Right.
But you might think that just thinking about it, like the logic of AI versus having to do it yourself. But I see it as even more of a challenge. And that's why I want to... I've just always done it. For 35 years, I've been shooting... And I'm just building this website now that's basically documentary photography. So it's
cool.
It's not any of my commercial work. I've done a lot of food and.
Hence the James Beard Award.
Yes.
I love this.
Well, that's what it came from. Was that food magazine? It was
Amazing.
layouts for the food magazine. But I have been building out this site, and it's I don't care if it makes a dime, but I need to see it. I need to see this progression of all my work and what overlap, and maybe it does influence my painting,
Absolutely.
It does. Composition and figures and people, they influence so much my sense of composition. And I love collage because I love sort of found photography too. So I don't know. I sometimes think that later, maybe part 3 or 8 or 20 of my career is just enjoying it even more. But that's why I wanted to make sure I got a camera that was comparable to some of my favorite cameras, and it was worth getting, because I want to know that the machine I'm using, or the tool I'm using, is really top notch, so that what I do, I don't have to think about it. I just, because I'm more interested in the subject and what's happening. But I just,
So what are you going to do with the site? When does the site, where
I don't know.
is it? How do we find it?
It's the first time I've had patience in my life. I've been doing it for like probably 8 months now. I've been editing hundreds of photos over the course from 30 years.
Whoa.
And a lot of people would have no idea I even have. Not that they're supposed to. But I just have always cared about it. But because my ego and my career seemed to just be taken over by painting and illustration, that kind of realm, photography was even frowned upon by friends. They're like, oh, whatever. They would just be like, well, why would you want to be a photographer? Anybody can be, everybody's a photographer. Anybody can be. But I'm like, not if you see my heroes' work. You're not going to find that in Instagram.
Yeah, and you can't do that.
Yeah,
not anyone can do that.
And not anybody can do it.
Plenty of people can take a photo.
Yes, because it's not about just taking the photo now. It is about what you choose to take a photo of, and the implications of that. We still use our eyes every day to assess, to ruminate, to be sentimental about, to remember and recall things. We're using our eyes all day, right? You're using your eyes. You're not using a strange painting.
Yeah.
Painting is like it's just different. It's fine, but it's more of I always use this analogy, but it's just like painting is more of a chess game for me. It's just like fun to say, oh, how can I integrate this realm, this genre, but mix it up with this one, and yet then say fuck you to both of those and go right on top of those to show you that so it's really this game, this psychological game, and it's really meant for, in a way, it's meant for just other painters to look at, like peers.
Yeah.
Whereas photography is, if you think about it, it's like, it might be the most challenging to be unique with it, but it's the most universal. So you're showing, if you can show the world, if you can point to the things that you would like for them to look at or think about or look at again, like look twice at, you can only do that with photography.
Yeah.
People can, I think it's mainly bullshit when you got to see this show, like, this work, these paintings are like, they're all about like, I don't know, some devastating, they're a response to social media, or their response to this, a response to this. I'm always like, no, they're not. They're not a response to anything. Now, they might be a response, but it is so unconscious of what that artist is doing. What it is it's a buildup of their their career, what they do, and they've latched on to some reason this realm, but you're justifying it to the public. Oh, it's because this is a response to this, or nature disappearing, or blah, blah, blah. Because someone has to
put
help.
A bow on it and like be able to market it and have an idea of how to sell it. And I also agree that this is bullshit. And I think that this sets up artists to fail because they feel like they have to have some big idea. Whereas I'm like, pulling down the thing and getting it out of your head and onto a canvas, like that is a very private.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Maybe undiscernible thing that happens, like maybe until after the work is completed and you look at it for a year and you look back and say like, why did I do that? You might not even be aware of why you're doing it. I think it's insane when people are not insane, but I think it's a bit on the nose when people are like, this is a commentary on, like, they want to put an idea, the idea is leading the way of the work. And I always think that's kind of backwards, because I'm like, the idea will prompt the work. It will never go in front of the work. The idea is something that's subconscious that you process in your brain, and the work is a result of that. But it's never going to be like, I had this idea and now I have to make work to match it. It's just a weird concept.
Yeah. Like, I think this way about the world, and geez, what would be an interesting way to show that? Now, I do think that there are people that are very deliberate, of course, that do that.
Yes.
Look, that again, like street artists, but Shepard in particular, he would never say otherwise. Like, yeah, it's graphic design done in a beautiful way, but
With a message.
he's working very specifically with subliminal stuff and trying to, has messages,
Yeah.
which is great. Mine, I don't ever plan. I've never planned a painting, in the last 20 years or so. I've never planned a painting. I just start it. So how am I supposed to afterwards I can justify it, but it's usually, if I'm really honest about how I justify it, it would take a lot more. It would be like, well, I've just always wanted to prove to myself that I could use only charcoal with one color and still make it interesting looking. So that could be your truth, but you have to say it. Instead, you have to say, it's all about the simplifying in this difficult time. And it's like, So that is hard with the art world. And that's why I chose to just stop galleries and everything, because it just doesn't, it's really hard.
It's a really insane puzzle to try to piece together, and I feel like people are constantly looking for some metric, or art is such a business in a way, but it's made it trickier for people to just make work for the sake of making work, because that in itself just doesn't really make much sense. Like, you're compelled to make this work, and then now you have to be like, well, I'm an artist and this is my livelihood, and then the whole game changes around again. But I think you navigate that, and you've done such an relatable approach to it, which is just that you are an artist, and so you're going to continue being an artist in whatever shape that takes. It doesn't have to be, I'm an abstract painter all the time, or I'm an illustrator. Like, there's these things that people want you to kind of pick a thing and stay in it, and I just don't think that's realistic. I think people are going to evolve, hopefully their whole careers. They're going to keep changing,
but they have to accept when it's time to evolve. And a lot of
How
times,
do you know?
once you're deeply money is integrated into the mix, it's very hard. It's very hard to change. I think there are different kinds of lucky. I feel like now I can just do whatever I want, because I don't make some huge amount of money from it, and I do other things that allow me to not worry about that. So
I think that's incredibly smart.
But I've built but I didn't. Doesn't mean that I didn't go through big years of phases where I thought, I know, I just want to be a painter. I just want to be a painter. I'm just going to sell my paintings. But I realized that that's just not the way my brain thinks. My brain will always be trying to outwit everything that I see in front of me, whether it's the whole art industry or whatever. And I know you can't do that, but I'm trying to outwit. It's a game, so as long as I'm doing that, it'll always be a natural thing that people are not going to love what you do right at the time, because your brain is not set up to accept it as into their little arena as art yet, or they just don't know, and that's fine. Like, I look at other people's work too, and it just shocked me. I'm just like, is that what am I seeing? I don't know what I'm supposed to be seeing. It's just because you haven't had a nice little time to sit with it. But by the time money or galleries or something catch up with it, I'm already done with that. I'm and so, but they're going to ask you, well, we loved what you look at this work you did like 5 years ago. This stuff is shit, man. If you should do more of that. And I'm like, now, I could either just be mad at them and call the whole art world a scam, or I can just say, no, it's my personal duty to myself to say, I'm out. Like, I can't see this as money at all, because it'll always be infringing upon my truth if I'm made to try to imitate what people like or something. So that,
even when it's yourself,
even when it's your own damn self. So
crazy?
That's the thing, is that I just don't, I'm in a good spot now, because I just enjoy it. And when I don't feel like doing it, I put it off, And I was going to say, the only other people that are really in great spots with that are people that are so huge that whatever BS or cool stuff they end up making, they can just do it and kind of say, fuck you to the galleries, because they're making $1.2 million from a piece already from them. So if they want to change gears, the art world actually has to change with them because they're in such a state of power, like a Julian Schnabel type thing, where it's like he's already, well, it's like you moved above like the blue chip artist.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
But if you're trying to land just under it or in that, that's the scariest part, because you have to imitate yourself. You're going to have to find a genre, and you're going to have to stick with something. And if people want a body of work, I've never believed in bodies of work, because again, unless you just have it in you. Look, if I see someone that lives in a hospital and has never seen art in their life and has no promise of a gallery show, and yet they make 100 pieces that all look really similar, then I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a body of work,
Yeah.
But to make a body of art, for me, a body of work, it doesn't make sense. I can't sit there and go, okay, I'm going to need to try to make the rest of the pieces similar in color and style. It's just, it doesn't make sense. That turns into, that's another form of commercial art to me.
It is, because this is the thing that I see happen, where I'm like, you're asking the artist to kind of freeze in time. And that's an unnatural state. It's like, I
So
like
unnatural.
you right here. And it's really like, I'm a living, breathing, changing, evolving person that is, there's no way, like you said, unless that's just the work. Ironically, Jeremy's brother makes art in a very pure way. And he did have a brain injury when he was young. He makes the same kind of art and always has. And
Interesting.
It's what you would call a body of work in a pure way.
Yeah.
But it's like, other than something like that, there's no way you're going to freeze someone and right there. And that's
unless you actually freeze their brain with an injury.
Yeah,
in a way,
exactly. No, totally.
Yeah, right. But there, to be fair to the vast, the array of different kinds of artists there are in the world, not everybody has to be one-to-one. The art has to match my truth at that moment that I produce it, and that there's no way I'm going to change. There are many people that have great careers that seem damn happy, and I'm kind of envious.
Yeah.
Where they found a style, even though they're super creative people. There's a style that people have picked up on, and they have done the same style for years, and they don't seem. Sure, they may have thoughts of breaking out, but there's a little more of a balance in their life. Whereas it took me many years to figure out that my brain will never be balanced like that. It's always going to have to be a one-to-one with my truth. So, for that reason, it'll always be like a little bit hand-to-mouth living, and that's just the nature of it. And microdosing mushrooms really helped me understand that. That money is just nothing.
The money is just
stress. It doesn't make sense.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. You have this great vantage point of being in the game for as long as you have, and doing what you've done for as long as you have, even if it changes shape. Where I'm like, that is extremely valuable to people who are listening out there that might be like, is it even an option to have a career in art? Is this something worth trying? And I don't know. I mean, your perspective on it, I think, is brilliant, because it's just trying to be honest with yourself the whole way through. And I think that maybe some people do create the same work over a course of a lifetime, but I don't know if I believe that. I think there's some element of complacency in that, because I think there's no way to untangle it from, even now. I mean, I watch people, Jeremy or anybody who's putting up a show, and it's like, it's so hard not to let the metric of sales or what's your next thing, or did you get the show at this, or are you doing that now, or what's next?
And why haven't you had
you?
a show in a while? You're losing your public persona or
and
whatever.
It's just like that none of that has anything to do with the art, really, but it's sort of inextricably tangled up
if you've chosen to try to be in the industry, it's just a rule. I mean, it's kind of a rule, a natural thing. So that's the thing. That's why I don't really ever, I don't want to be, I used to be angrier when I was younger at those kind of things. Like, oh, that person's a sellout. Why are they doing this? But it's like, oh, no, you don't have to choose just because they're choosing that. And how many musicians do we all poo-poo because do you even care about what, anybody, this Paul McCartney or Neil Young does now, or Bob Dylan or any of these people?
Yeah.
And I don't. And not many people do. I don't know who does out there.
Yeah.
But it's like, but why do we have to be mad about it? Why can't we just say, hey, they're still alive. It's a testament that they still love music. I don't think they need the money.
Right.
They're just producing because they love it, but we're mad at them because they're not doing what they did, 50 years ago.
Yes. And when you hear people like that speak, you're like, Bob Dylan is literally like, I can't even remember being that person.
Yes, right.
I
heard that
don't even know how
recently.
to connect to that person. I can't believe I did that. It's like
he's like,
their
at the
out-of-body
time-
experience for them to be older and looking back at their work, or just be in a different place or 10 years removed from where they were when they made that work. And that's what I mean. It's like if there's any way that you're still making that type of work your whole life later, it's like maybe there is an element of complacency or just kind of hitting the same button over and over. But it's amazing to me because as I get closer to looking at the lifespan of an artist, a true artist who's going to keep working their whole life, which I feel like you are, it's just a cool thing to notice how that's going to change and to be like, okay, in the, like you say, the imbalance of all that, like not knowing where it's going next. But I think that no matter what you do, it's going to stand out because your work to me is just like I said, you don't have to know anything about art to look at it and just be like, this is the brain of a madman. This is the brain of a This is a creative person who has somehow, if you've ever tried to get an idea out of your head onto a piece of paper or canvas or into a song or any sort of thing like that, you know how hard that is to do. And it's amazing.
And I never have ideas. Well, that's not to say I don't lay down and I imagine interesting paintings, but I've never, not that I could, maybe there's some instance, but not that I can remember that I've ever actually tried to pull those ideas and successfully put them on paper or canvas or whatever.
They just come out.
It has to be in the moment. And I'm not doing, the painting is just doing me. The painting is like, this is the way I kind of see it. There's infinite, right? There's infinite paintings, possibilities when you're looking at something. And all you're doing is, I'm just letting it, just like a lot of songwriters say this stuff too, that they literally are just a conduit. Yeah. And that to try to break their process down would be really hard because so much of it is just, you're just sitting there and you things drop into you while you're doing it once you get in that zone. So for me to say otherwise, that, oh yeah, I'm thinking I've planned this all out and it's a genius thing. So I've again, like being honest, being truthful to what your process has become, just going ahead and saying, that is who I am. Because once in a while I still think, I'm like, Elise, I'm getting an iPad, and I did. Getting an iPad, and I'm going to start planning my paintings on an iPad, like through Procreate or whatever. Yeah. And it hasn't worked yet. I just can't do it. So I'm like, damn it, just accept. So it never ends, really. You're going to go through that old person. That's
the takeaway.
Yeah. That little thing is always going to be poking up. It's just not as often. And at some point, you're just doing the math. Like, I'm a certain age now, 53. And at a certain point, you're almost like relieved, like, oh, I'm 53. Like, I just remember that. Enjoy, like, if you know who you are now, so don't worry about it so much. Do you still want to be worrying about it when you're 60? So it's like numbers alone start to relieve you of the pressure. It's nice.
Wow. No, I love that.
I'm trying to justify being older.
No.
I shouldn't have let myself get older.
Why? I let myself go.
I don't buy into this aging thing.
But age, you cannot deny that that's something that I think a lot of people think about. But I feel like in the artist realm, it's like if ever there was a career where you could do it until you die in some fashion, I think it is art. And so I really don't.
I do too.
I don't see age. I see age as an incredible benefit as I get older, because I'm like, I have more context around how to tell a story, or I have more understanding of myself or understanding of who I am and the experiences that I've had. Whereas when I was young, I was like trying to kind of get them out. but not having the finesse that only comes with age.
Especially writing.
Yeah.
Like, how can a writer, and there are people that, of course, defy it, and they somehow write about universal, deep feelings without being just being in their 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
And I'm like, of course, a writer is best when they're the older they get, I would think.
I would think so. And I think it takes that wisdom of having seen yourself in a bunch of different iterations to like truly find out who you are, which I don't think people ever really do. There's a lot of people say they're self-aware, but it's like kind of impossible.
You get glimpses.
Yeah, you do.
But you can't live in that.
No.
You can't look at yourself and live at the same time. That's a Buddhist, maybe more thing. That is like, if you live just a life of contemplation, then you can kind of live in that space, or at least according to what we think of as self or whatever, self-aware. But yeah, it's very smart to get that self-awareness. And I think meditation helps a ton.
Oh, yeah.
Which is new to me. I mean, I've been doing it lately, and it does clear your brain.
How long do you meditate? What do you do? What's your practice
It's like, they always say, you shouldn't be in a laying down position when you're meditating.
Jeremy always lays down, and I'm like, you're just sleeping.
No, dude, I turn on my side with my thumb on my mouth and hold a teddy bear, and I'm like, here I go, off to sleep.
Meditate.
But no, I look, I don't want to go into any of that because it's hard because I don't want to preach that. It's something that either you've arrived at a time in your life and someone
Yes.
meets you with the concept of meditation.
Yes.
And when you're ready for it, you think it's cool. But
Right.
but I don't want anybody to think that I think there's anything metaphysical or magic or godly or whatever or religious about it.
Yeah.
Because there's not. I strictly adhere to, in my brain, like, this is a scientific thing.
Exactly.
And it is a scientific thing.
It is.
That it's a way of clearing your mind. So, but I think mantras and essential oils and all the stuff that comes with that realm.
Yes.
They can scare people off into feeling, well, that's that thing. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, some of the people I admire the most, of course, David Lynch is one of my biggest heroes of all time.
He's the man.
And he's almost too much of a spokesperson for it. I mean, I think he's like the head of the.
Is he?
The Transcendental Meditation. That he's the top of it.
Wow.
But
I mean, that kind of makes sense.
But that's what I studied. I mean, I took a TM class, and that's what I like, and I did it because I thought, if it helps him get to a place, and he's written some books about it, even if I don't agree with him, like being a spokesperson for it,
Yeah.
I still am like, well, he did it, and Seinfeld does it. Howard Stern does it.
This is the thing, and that's
Jim
what,
Carrey.
when we go back to talking about if you can get to a place that's as close to quote unquote, like just making art for yourself, it takes a great strength of the mind to literally push all of those other people's responses, how they feel, if it sold, what it did, all of that. You have to control your mind, and you'll never be able to. It's so powerful, but the process of trying is like a muscle. And I think that it's been huge.
It does get easier and easier
for me, but at the same time, I'm with you. Where I'm like, I'm not trying to tell anybody like meditate for 20 days and it'll change your life. Like if you're not ready for it, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, it is not better than anybody.
No.
Is what I'm trying to say.
No, it's just a tool.
I've always been, that's the side of me that's like, it's so hard for me to say anything that I don't feel like is completely in my truth, but yet I have mixed it into my truth somehow. But I've taken it took a long time, so I just don't want to say like, listen, do this, kids.
No, I don't think there's any. I mean, like the more I talk to people, I'm like, there's no one way to do anything. Everybody does.
Some people don't need it.
Some people are better just a mess living in their own head, and so it's fine. It really doesn't. It's just fascinating to me to see how people change because it's a long game. When you're doing art and you're pursuing art as like I think about this sometime and I will almost honestly panic because I'm like, I really don't have a backup plan. Not that I have a plan. I have no plan. And that's where I'm my happiest. But then if my logical brain comes into play and I'm like, why don't you have any retirement? Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Don't even bring that up.
I know, it's your terrible thoughts.
Oh my God.
But I'm just like, I have this gift that just doesn't really enter the chat very often, and when it does, I kind of swat it away quickly, and then I just move on in my life. And I think that's it's cool to see. It's cool to be in your studio and to be around your work and to just to talk to you, because I'm such a fan of what you do, and it's honestly an honor to have you on the show and
I'm
to be
glad we're friends.
in Charleston. I know.
New friends.
We are new friends.
No, it's fun.
It's
and we don't. Lisa and I are always like, it's time to do some clearing. Get rid of some old friends, and so we get very excited about new people, especially if they just feel like again, just like get to know yourself, and it takes a long time. Couples get to know themselves together.
Oh, yeah.
That little third person that a couple creates, not a baby, but like that invisible thing that is like me and Elise as a couple is an entity, right? And you have to be honest with what works. And there's times when we meet people, because it's so easy for her and me to love girls more. They're just so much more fun and approachable and talk about your real feelings. But, we meet a couple, and so often it's just like, oh, and Tim, here's
your friend.
Here's, Mike over here. Just go or not Mike. I don't mean any specific names. I don't mean my good friend Mike. But let's just say Dave. No, I have a good friend named Dave, too.
John.
Thor.
Thor. Yeah, here's Thor.
Yeah, they're just saying, here, go talk to this guy. And it's just like, hey, what kind of art do you make? And I'm just like, this is going to be the longest night
of my life.
And all I can do is can't wait to get home. So that said, like, just like you can edit your art better, you edit your friends as you get older, too. And
you do. Because they bleed into everything as well. I mean, that's something I'm also paying more attention to. Is just like how I have this fear of time. I had a teacher that would say on top of the syllabus, it just said, remember that the clock is ticking. And so I have this like ever present like fear of running out of time. And it's kind of, it's a motivator in my life. It's it's a driving force, and it actually works really well for me, but at times it can be overwhelming, and I'm always aware that you don't have that much time, and you can't spend it with people that you're just kind of excited about hanging out with. You just can't. It will affect you in ways that you're not even aware of.
It's wearing you down. And what about wasted time? That's my biggest pet peeve, is wasted time. I can't even, I will lose my shit if I drive to the grocery store. This happens so many times, right? You go to the grocery store, get all these groceries, and then you don't, your card doesn't work, or you don't have it on you, or whatever.
Oh my God, yeah.
And you're like, well, that was it. And I sit and dwell on that forever. I think, oh my God, that is time that I just wasted. I relive it in my head. I walked up and down and deliberately picked these things out. I can't stand it. It makes me feel insane. It's like if I miss an exit on the highway, and I have to wait to the next exit, knowing that all I'm doing is having to get off that exit and go back on the highway and then go back to the other exit. All that time, I just have to sit there. Elise knows. I just have to sit there and be really dead silent, because I'm fuming inside. That I'm like, this isn't even time right now. Let's not talk. This is just a little weird blister on our day, and so let's just act like it's not happening. Anyways, I hate wasted time. That's
I do too, and I'm so aware of how little it and how fast it goes. Even now, I think I have a lot of similar feelings. Although I feel like when I was in my 20s and I was wasting copious amounts of time, that maybe that's part of growing up.
We all do that.
Maybe that's part of just fucking up and growing up and wasting and burning a bunch of time to realize that it's valuable. But I'm very intentional about my time, and I'm just I don't know. I'm inspired by people who do the same, and it's just really fucking cool to sit in your studio and to spend time with you and talk to you, and thank you for being on the show.
I'm glad you came here.
It's amazing. There's so many cool things in here to look at. It's when will the website be ready? Where are you putting yourself?
I think what's hard about it is that you always have to put like your bio on a website.
Do you have to though? We talk about this all the time. Like,
do you have to?
Your bio is amazing though, so you should put it on.
Well, I like I know it's kind of a necessity for my painting site, right?
Yeah.
Because people want to know, they want to see like a rich history. But yeah, you're right. With photography, I kind of feel like, why not just keep it pretty like quiet and just say,
I think that's right.
Here are the images.
Let them speak for
and
themselves.
do what they, whatever. And people may hate them.
No,
And I don't wanna hear it.
I've seen your. I don't want to fucking hear that. I've seen some of your more recent photography, and you obviously. I think if you have an eye for design, for painting, for creating visual art of any medium, your photos will probably be incredible. But I've seen yours, and I know they are. So I'm really interested to see the older stuff.
I want you to see the edited version because
Yeah.
my fear is that people are like, yeah, I saw something you posted on the Instagram the other day, and I'm like, well, that's different. That's why I'm like, I'm eager to get it out there, but I'm also terrified.
I bet.
Of course, once it goes live, nobody has to even know.
Yeah.
You know?
I know.
They're
I'm
not
gonna
like,
find it on
I
the
think
internet.
I'll randomly type in Tim Hussey photography and see what happens. And there's another Tim Hussey out there. Of course,
Who's an artist?
No, it's a photographer.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's so random.
There's a few of them actually.
I've never met
Because
another
everybody's
Hussey.
a photographer. See, that's what the problem.
It's true. No, it's not true. And everybody's not a good one anyway. I don't know.
It's just a challenge.
It's
not a challenge to be different anymore with painting. But I want to choose something that's much more like layman, like everyday use, and see if I can do that outwitting by just purely showing what's right in front of us.
Well, I'm sure you will. I mean, with this beast
We'll
behind
see.
us, this
We'll
camera
see.
is.
Yeah, that's right. That thing is
amazing. Have you
actually
taken any photos with it?
it's traveling right now and taking pictures for me.
It's
Yeah, it's that good. Yeah, it's out there. It's
got
actually
an appointment.
convincing girls to get naked and stuff. It's real smooth. it's like, yeah, these are I just want to show the human figure in space. And,
just really interesting.
hey, I had my ways, just like you have your piano to sneak to get people.
Lessons.
You're like,
So
I always play
tawdry.
piano naked, and I teach people.
This is just how they remember chords better.
Right.
It's more effective. No, you're incredible, and I am so grateful for your time and for being on the show.
Thanks.
And for being my friend.
No, thanks for doing this. Mainly, it's the friend thing.
Yeah, I know. That
Yeah.
was the most exciting thing. And like just being someone who knew of your work and has followed your work and watched your work before even meeting you, it's kind of like a weird thing to be your friend now. And I feel very lucky in that. So thank you.
I appreciate you treating it as such.
With the respect it deserves.
Take my toupee off after you leave.
Well, I hope I'll know about the photographs when they go live. How much work have you worked through
I'll tell
in the
you.
30 years? How much where are you at in time? In 8 months, how much have you gotten done?
Oh, it's like I'm really just stuck on the bayou.
Are you serious?
It's like stuck on the bayou. I'm not stuck on the bayou. I'm stuck on the bayou.
I'm on the bayou. I'm
and
Creedence Clearwater.
And then maybe the last thing I'm stuck on is, now that I have this new camera, I kind of want to mess with it some first. Because what if I take some shots, and then I think, damn, this is wasting everything I've ever done. So I just I want to make sure that, I don't know what I want to make sure of.
All right.
It's just the only thing that's not a huge public thing for me, like as far as art. So it's nice.
But I like that, and I also liked before when we were talking, you said you don't like doing shows, and I think that's amazing because I think a lot of people don't like doing shows, and I think that's like people think that's counterintuitive when you're an artist, but I'm like, it's really not. It's kind
I
of
think if you
natural.
go through it, once you go through it, I think it's a necessity to go through it because you learn how to on the spot talk about your work a little bit. There's definitely good things. Like I'm not the guy that's like I really didn't have much tolerance for people that are like, oh, I'm just like such an introvert. I just work for myself and these galleries. Like I don't like when people are unprofessional to a gallery, like they're about to have a show and the painter just can't get it together. Mm-hmm. Like there's still like some things are late. I'm like, dude, that's not cool.
That's not professional.
Like your art brain doesn't need to bleed into the poor people that are trying to help you,
Right.
and you think it's cool. So,
Right.
but that said, I explored galleries for like 20 years, and every one of them helped me get to where I am. And now I don't. It's just that our industry has changed so much that I don't see the point of galleries anymore, unless you're being shown to like a brand new audience in a big city for my work. I don't see the point, a big point of it, I just,
what do you think changed that makes it?
well, because
not
everybody
relevant now?
Instagram. I mean,
Yeah.
Instagram is the best gallery now for anybody. And, social media in general, but just a gallery doesn't even show, now people want to see the artist, who they are, sort of too.
Yeah.
Like people don't love just to see a cropped piece of art over and over on someone's Instagram, right? They want to see that you're a normal, or that you have a life, and who are you, so that they can relate to you more, and it becomes this thing. Whereas galleries have always kept that distance, and I don't even like the idea of somebody, a gallerist. I'm like, no one's ever gonna have me in a gallery again. They're like, fuck you.
Sealing your fate.
They're
right
like,
now.
mental note. No, I don't like the idea of someone, even like when a customer comes in and I'm pointing at my work and saying, yeah, this guy, I just don't want to hear that anymore. I don't want to hear them describing what they think and why you should like my work or something. It's just not, it's just it's embarrassingly silly. But it wasn't when I was younger, because I got to get people's responses to my work for the first time, because when I started, there wasn't social media. So it was like, you didn't get to do that.
Right.
But now I'm like, I barely want to do social media, but it's a little more doable. But okay, but let's like break it down.
Yeah.
I don't want to give 50% of everything I make just because someone hung something
Right.
on a wall, because 90% of what I've seen, the galleries aren't really doing any more work than the artist can do. Unless that person's out there and taking you to every art fair and pumping you up and making sure that you're really
being seen by the right people. It's like, that's...
Yeah.
And how can you be sure that that's even what's happening? It does feel... There's a real push and pull with that. And there's so many schools of thought around that. And I think it's really hard for young artists to navigate, because being in a gallery feels like the epitome of like, hey, my career is like legitimized.
Yes, it is.
But in the end, it's like it's the actual reality of working with them doesn't feel like that. And it starts to be like, well, I don't know, like, what's the point of this, or what are they bringing to the table, really? Or are they even behind the scenes, like, putting words in your mouth? I've heard people talk about Jeremy's work in ways I'm like, that's not what that's about. And that's the line that's used to sell it. And that's, he's not ever been represented by a gallery. But I just mean in the case where someone else is involved in telling the story.
Yeah.
It starts to feel wrong in some way.
Yes. But you're not allowed, you can't be mad at them, right?
No.
They're especially if they started out just, I love art, I love artists, and I think I'd be good at representing them. That's great. It's just not for me because of the cut, how big of a percentage it is still. It's antiquated. It's not like, that's not how it can be done anymore. You're not supposed to do it that way anymore.
Yeah.
Like, how can you stop me, other people, from buying my work and saying, well, if they bought my work, we get, because they want 50%, even if you're not in the gallery, of course.
Or they had nothing to do with the sale.
Nothing.
It's like the sale happens, but they own like some part of your profits, essentially, is what they own, and your work. And it also, I think, just gets into people's heads more and more. But it's so weird that's like, for a lot of young artists, that's like, hey, if I had that,
milestone.
It would be,
just to get it under your belt and say, I knew how to present myself and it's nice to see your work on a clean wall. Mm-hmm. And that's all that stuff is a great feeling. And then if you grow out of it, doesn't mean you grow above it. Just like if you grow out of it, that's just not who you are anymore. Yeah. Then you got to admit that to yourself. Because I used to just ego-wise would say, because when you're young, you're so excited that a gallery wants to represent you, you'll do anything. You're like, oh yeah, even if it doesn't sell anything. And then, but that's you can still get that nice feeling when someone asks, like, hey, would you want to be represented by us? And you think, yeah, your instinct is like, yeah, you like me. Yeah. But it feels good when you finally turn around and say, I just don't think it's a good fit. Yeah. I don't see what I'm going to get out of it, and I don't want to waste your time. And that's a good feeling when you say that. Maybe there will be a good fit one day, but
maybe. And I think it's just knowing that it's not the end all be all, because I feel like there is a lot of young painters that are out there that are they're very much against this. Like, what's the point? Who needs one? If you can get your work out, great. But I think there also is a cap that you hit where it's like, well, maybe you've saturated this area, and how do you get exposure to a new audience? And these are the questions that a lot of people want to know the answer to, that again, I feel like have very little to do with painting. And it's like, it's hard to, it's hard.
I think it's important for every painter to know that if you're trying to do there's contemporary work. I don't even know what to call it sometimes, but there's fine art that is like, if you really do great landscapes and they just sort of sell, that's great. You know where you stand. That's what you want to do. But if you're in this sort of like world that I'm in, sort of contemporary and at times completely abstract or whatever, you just got to know that you've got to have, if you need money, you've got to do it some other way, and just have that be built in. Don't see that as a defeat.
I'm really happy you said this,
because it's not success. It's not success. Nobody out there is just like some huge hit doing something like what I do. It's not what it is. You're never going to be a hit. It's the long game, and if you want to keep it pure, you can't wonder where if you're going to sell a painting, because your hunger for food is going to override your hunger to prove yourself, because you're going to be like, well, shit, people seem to like this and I need to pay the rent. You just can't help it. So it took me a long time to just go, but that's why I've always art directed magazines, because it was like I could do it on my time, and there's no overlap. And they're very finite. They're on a schedule. I don't like doing graphic design just for anything. I don't like doing logos or advertising or anything. It has to be straight editorial graphic design. That is what I do, because it's turn and burn. You don't have to do 1,000 versions of one layout, and you don't have to care what the client thinks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's your thing. It's very different than normal graphic design. So I think I chose wisely. Until I realized print was dying. And
yeah, but I don't think print or magazines or editorial in some fashion will always exist, whether it's in digital or not. And I think that I love that you said that, because I feel like so many artists nowadays are like striving to get to the place where they're like, I'm a full-time artist. And that's like the badge of honor that they want to wear. And I understand that, but like I think that it's a nice separation of church and state.
Yes.
To have your money coming from somewhere else, until it's just undeniable that like, hey, this is something that you can feel like that. And even then, it's never undeniable.
Even then, it's undeniable.
There's always a chance. And I've only ever waited tables. And then now I produce podcasts, but that was like, I was so slow to get out of waiting tables. And I still am always like, I would go back to waiting tables.
I could do that. I still have that.
Yeah, always. Because I'm like, I'm just never going to, I'm not so hasty to define myself as anything. Yeah. Because I think that's a really dangerous spot to be in, because you can then it just gets tied to money, and it becomes like it becomes hard to separate that. And you kind of hate, like, I don't know about you, but when I went to art school very briefly for music. And as soon as I got there, I was like, you're making me hate everything that I loved about music by me coming here. Now I'm being forced to practice in these rooms and like to be a teacher of music. I was like, this is expensive. Or be in
a big band, famous. Right. It's like it's such the stakes are so high. Like, it is. It really is.
It was like, wow, these are extremes that I have to now choose. And I was just like, or you could just live your life and continue to pursue the things that I'm never going to not be a person who's doing something creative. I've tried everything too. And I really identify with people like that, because I think that it takes the pressure off your work to pay your bills. And I think that in some capacity should always be the case, because you just don't know where your work is going to go, and you let it go where it wants to go.
Your work will shine so much more if it's untainted by, look, you might fall into a style that people are loving, and you're like, shit, I guess I could just lock this in and just do this now and make a bunch of money. But it's like, then you won't live with you'll be like, oh, I sold out. That's what you did. You literally stopped and said, I'll go ahead and cash in here. And, but it takes a long time to stop yourself from thinking that is success, because there was a time, if you base like your career on 10 or 20 years before your time, people really were, you can look back at the whole beat movement or the Warhol days and all that stuff, when these guys really were first introducing a realm that I kind of work in. Well, yeah, because it was all brand new. So lucky them, They all got shuttled to the top of their game, but the fact is that's not. I am in kind of a genre that's it's mixed, but still, it's not something that needs to be a stardom anymore. It's not like it is something that will now just speak to certain people, not to others, and accepting that is important. But if you think you're going to live, somebody just told me once, like, what is your business model? And I was like, what is the business model?
Yeah.
Like, I was like such an idiot. And this is just a few years ago. And I remember like really coming to terms with, they asked me, do you know anybody else that is doing like what you do and is making enough to live off of and everything's great? And I'm like, no, not one. In fact, what they've done, they either do what I do, which is they have a separate job, or they have a husband or wife that is the supplier, the breadwinner. Great for them. Or they have money from family. Great for them.
Great for them.
Fuck you. I mean, great for you. Look, that's always been the thing, right? It's like there are so many ways. I'm in kind of a halfway. I definitely was lucky enough that I was made to feel like I could do anything with my life. I wasn't having to crawl out of like poverty or whatever. But that also can be a thorn in your side because you think you can climb even greater, but no, I've still needed the support of having a career to help it. I'm in a strange hybrid kind of like middle ground, where it's like I admire people that really have to fight for their work so much that they live in their studio on the floor in a warehouse, and they have a mini fridge, and that is how they live. And they deserve the best. To me, they deserve the best. And you know what? They might be able to kind of live that way the rest of their lives and still have a productive career and feel good. And that is a different kind of human. I needed like beauty around me, and I still needed to be able to go to certain things and parties and have a little money on me,
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not going to be that. I'm not the guy that just lives and dies for art and at whatever cost. But I'm also not the guy that has the money from the family that is just like, I can just do whatever I want. And I'm right there in the middle, and I'm fine with it. I mean, that was the struggle's fine. I don't know. Here, I'm 53. Who cares?
I love it.
Who cares anymore?
I think you're actually in a place that a lot of artists are in. I think that's actually probably the most.
That's probably the majority.
The majority.
It is.
Of people who are working. And I'm like, that is why I think it's amazing that you're where you are and still doing so many cool and exciting things. And I'm just so excited to see what you do next. I think it's incredibly inspiring. And I know, like I said, around Charleston and everywhere, and I feel like I've heard you're aspirational for people who are starting or trying to start in this realm. And you make it seem possible because it is so real. It's not like some fantasy, like I did that and now my troubles are over. I think a lot of people think I made this one painting and then I sold it to the right person and my troubles are over.
Yeah,
and that's just
all you have to do is
never
talk to me like you are. But like when Jeremy and I talk, I get that same joy. I get the joy out of his passion, but also his brain, smarts about it. And so we can really relate when we talk because it's not just like, I'm like, oh, your work's kind of, like I don't have to bullshit, but I also can tell him the truth, which I want. I want to hurry up and tell people the truth. That is, get a second job if you need to. Mm-hmm. And actually, you know what? Even if you don't need to, just keeping your hands busy, that contrast of going between your thing that doesn't matter that much to your painting, that back and forth is what drives the art so much.
Yes.
If I was given total freedom all day now, it would be really hard. In fact, things have been free like since the holidays have been over. It's been really loose. Oh. And I just sometimes just sit there and stare and go, what? I didn't have all these things I wanted to do that were creative, but I don't want to because I don't have that rat race. I don't have that thing that's saying you got to fight for the time to be creative.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that to anybody, but I guess, but always my main takeaway is, because it's my biggest lesson in life, was know that, really look at your peers. Is there anybody that's really making it? You got to decide. It doesn't have to be that you don't make money and you live poor, or that you're a blue chip artist. You can find this ground, but you need to face up to the fact that find something that you reasonably enjoy and that you could do long term, that could support it, that doesn't, kill it. And for some reason, that universally it seems like graphic design is kind of one of those things. So many painters are also graphic designers. It's just, I guess it goes hand in hand.
They do, I think, for sure.
Or web designers or whatever. But that is so important. That was so important to my happiness, accepting that, and getting over that hump of like, one day I'm going to make it.
Yeah, because that shuts it down completely. There's almost a paralysis that comes with being like, why isn't it happening? Why am I not where I want to be? And like this kind of constantly yearning for something that you haven't gotten yet. And that is just, that actually stops creativity altogether. It's like a full halt. It's most people, I think about that with writing, where I'm like, I'll write about old experiences in restaurants and in my time in different places in the world where I worked in restaurants. And I get sad often because I'm like, there's a finite amount of those stories for now, because I stopped working in restaurants, and it's like, you almost lose the thing that inspired you to do whatever the creating was at that time. It's like
totally.
You're limited now with when you go all in on something. It's like, well, I'm just going to like write what? I have to have experiences to write about. You can't just write about writing.
You got to dip into the real world. You got to dip into it like
all the time, and be aware and be present in that. And I think that's great advice. And I could talk to you all day, but I
could too. What time is it?
11:40.
No, that's perfect. We did 2 hours.
2 hours? Yeah.
Oh, God.
I told you.
And we didn't even need microphones, really.
Yeah.
We could have been like, now let's start.
Yeah, I know. But it's...
I'm really glad to do this, Lindsay. And I am like, I'm getting like, my brain's getting foggy. I think I used up everything. I used my brain up.
You used it all up.
You used me.
I used your brain all up. Well,
you exploited me like at the galleries. Look what you've done.
Where's my 50%?
Sick. I know. I do have to pay you for this, don't I?
Yes. No, my God, I should pay you. This is an honor. Check out, if you don't know Tim's work already, there's a million ways to see his work. But do you have paintings on view in Charleston? If people want to see them, you have work on Instagram that you post semi-regularly. And it's your photography's on Instagram as well.
Do you want me to tell them my answer, or do you do that?
Yeah, I'll tell. I'll put it in the show notes too. But it's But it's at Tim Hussey, right?
No, my main website that just kind of has everything, so you can get a taste of everything, is Hussey Art.
Hussey Art. HUSSEY.
Yes.
ART.
Sure.
.com.
I'm not a loose girl. I'm
There's
just a normal
there.
Hussey.
Respectable.
Okay, then there's and my Instagram is T Hussey Studio.
Hussey Studio.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Check out Tim's work.
Thank you.
He's never going to do another show again. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't even bother asking.
Don't ask when it is, but I am going to, I'll be searching the internet randomly for this photography website. So if it comes up, I'll share it with you all.
Okay. Don't you dare.
And everyone, you can rate and review the show. You know you can do this, and I forget to say this all the time because I forget that you can do it. But you can, and it helps people find the show. So do it if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening to the show. And I'll see you next week. And it won't be 4 weeks. I swear-ish. I promise at least that I'll do one next week. That's what I promise. That's it. All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Je laisserai un mot sur le frigo. On déciderait de se faire la malle. Ta famille, les amis.